In shooting my digital DJing for Serato course, I went through a lot of controllers to try to find a budget option that would work, just because I wanted people to be able to have a budget option when they're studying before committing to some really fancy hardware. So I went through a lot of controllers, and I ultimately decided on the Roland DJ-202 as my personal budget controller of choice for Serato DJ Pro. We'll talk about some of the pros and cons and why it was my final decision. Welcome to the lab. Before we go into the controller, I got to give a lot of credit to Serato for really embracing the controller format and the MIDI format. For a while, if you weren't DJing with turntables, they just didn't really have any hardware for you. So to see that there's a lot of options in that field now compared to even a few years ago is really, really fun. So kudos to the team at Serato. It's a great time to be a digital DJ. There's a lot of choices in the market that we didn't have before, so that's awesome. Right out the bat, one of the things that I really liked about the DJ-202, because I believe in starting with the pros, it has a MIDI out built in. And I know that's a random feature. I know that doesn't seem like the most required of features for a DJ controller. But I really think the next step for a lot of producers is this DJ-producer hybrid career where we're performing more. And having a MIDI out on a controller like this lets you plug in drum machines, synthesizers, and other things, other pieces of gear that will sync to your DJ set. So you can have something playing on deck A or deck B and then have that synced up to, you know, a Korg Volca Beats or one of the Roland hardware synthesizers and do something live over what you're DJing. And I think that's a real cool way of introducing people to the live DJ format. But to talk more about the day-to-day things that you'll see in a traditional DJ set, the real big draw for me were these platters. I think a lot of people forget about feel when they're picking their controllers, and I tried some options with smaller platters. I come from a tractor environment, so I'm really comfortable with touch strips too. But there's nothing better than having a jog wheel that you have full control over. And I thought the 202 was a good combination of portability. It's a pretty small controller overall, but it has these really big oversized platters, so you can really groove through a record and seek and scratch through a record without paying attention to where your hands are. I like the feel of it. The overall build quality, although it's plastic, does feel a lot more rugged than other controllers that I've had. One thing that I should talk about, this the 202, the 505, and the DJ-808, all from Roland, have built-in drum machines. You technically have the 808 drum sounds, the 909, the 606, and the 707. They're accessible in the 202 via these pads here that also control sampler functions and a lot of other things. If that's important to your workflow, I've got to say save a little bit of extra money and get the 505 and up. Reason being, they have dedicated step sequencers up top that control the drum machine functionality, and it's way less money than diving into these submenus on these banks. I have seen some producers and DJs using the sequencer on the 202 and doing really cool things, but I end up thinking about it more than I like to when trying to work in a DJ set, and that's not the environment I like to perform in. It is really cool when you, again, sync another drum machine out to it, but I do think that the big benefit of using, you know, sequencers is the feel of it. You have to be able to control things really quickly without thinking about it. And for me, doing that on these pads just really wasn't that yet. Maybe I should put some more time into practicing. That could totally be it. But again, I really think if that's your workflow, grab the one that has dedicated buttons up top. That's the 505 or the 808. It's a little bit more expensive, but you do get what you pay for. Something that really impressed me was the audio quality. And I'm coming from Tractor again. I'm coming from the Z1, which is their, I guess, their equivalent official controller from Native Instruments. It's a smaller unit that's pretty much just the mixer section on this controller. So, you know, I think with them being comparable price points, it's fair to compare their audio quality. And I'm not sure if it's just Serato's software or the hardware that I'm dealing with here, or both. But I really have to say, even compared to some of the Pioneer controllers I tried out, the 202 had a really good sound quality to it. I think everybody had kind of the same top end, but when you talk about depth and heft and kind of the weight of the signal, it felt a lot stronger and louder than other controllers that I tried, and that's running through a flat EQ. I didn't have to crank bass on anything, and sometimes I had to do that with other budget controllers. So right out of the bat, I think that's something really important to talk about, especially if you're playing certain forms of electronic music and audio fidelity is important to you. This was a really surprising investment in this price point. I was very shocked at how good it sounded. One thing that's kind of preached a lot that I think should be talked about is the microphone input. I think it's fair to assume that you can plug in your microphone to the mic in on this controller and then run your voice through the effects in Serato and play with them. And that's just not really the case. You have the ability to route to reverb, I think delay, and maybe a filter, and that's about it. And you have to set the settings of your mic input effects on the controller before loading up Serato. It's not something that's as intuitive as you might think it is. I don't know if that is the case for the 505 and the 808, but if that's something that's important to you, if you want to plug in a microphone and be able to do a lot of vocal effects, you might want to consider a dedicated option for a mixer, or maybe look into the 505 or 808 if they have that functionality. It's just not there for this. I haven't used the mic input on it at all, to be honest with you. I had some issues with the gain on it. Maybe it's the unit itself, but it just didn't warrant further usage in my opinion. That being said, that's not what I got the controller for. I got it for mixing, and for mixing it's doing a hell of a job. So the last thing we'll talk about that I thought was really cool, the 202 bundles with two things that are really important, especially if you're new or if you're coming back to DJing from vinyl and moving on to digital. It comes with, out of the bat, a Serato DJ Pro license, which doesn't always get included in hardware. At least at the time it did. Double check with your retailer to make sure that is still the case. Same goes for the next feature, which I thought was really cool, and that's a 90-day subscription to BPM Supreme, which is a DJ pool. It's a digital DJ pool with something like 70,000 MP3s of various genres. They update pretty frequently. They're great for grabbing clean versions. And it's an unlimited download situation. So for 90 days, you can basically stockpile your library full of songs that have their BPMs matched already. And really build your library from scratch. When I made the transition from Tractor to Serato, I said, I'm going to start fresh and really pick up things anew. And having that BPM Supreme subscription allowed me to get songs quickly that I knew were high quality. And that's really important. A lot of times you just grab things from whatever source you can get them from. And for some exclusives, you have to do that. But it was really nice to be able to get a bunch of hip hop, house, funk, R&B, clean versions, dirty versions, intros only, remixes, out of the bat. You know, I plugged in my controller, I had Serato installed within 30 minutes. Within an hour, I had a library full of songs that I could practice on. And that's a really great way to start. And it's a really great way to maintain your crates going forward. If you have a specialized gig, you can search through this DJ pool and kind of go from there. So really big pro that I wanted to talk about. If you're new to DJing, that's going to come in super handy. So overall, I'm really impressed with the controller. There's a lot of options. I do tell people, explore what you can. Go to your local music store, see if you can play with the controller and see how it responds to touch and how you feel about it, because feel is really the best indicator as to which piece of gear you should own. I think you kind of know when you're on a controller or on a physical setup that's made for you. And that's really what I felt when I grabbed the 202, so that's why I kept it. Our Digital DJing with Serato course is covering pretty much any type of controller you'd want to use. That's a 2-deck controller. The focus is more on the real stuff you need to learn. Serato software itself, dedicated workflows, how to make a library that's important and efficient, how to gig, how to pursue gigs, so on and so forth. So you will see demo videos using this controller, but if you have a setup already or a different setup that you prefer, I don't want you to get discouraged. You can use turntables if you want. That being said, if you're in the market for something new and been looking at something like the 202, you're gonna at the very least have my dedicated A+. I think it's a great controller to have, especially at this price point. If you have any questions, hit me in the comments or shoot an email to labsciencepodcast@gmail.com. Season 2 is coming in September. My homie Lean is coming back. We're really excited. The preview episode will be out in a couple of days. Until then, peace and love and take care of each other. One.